Hello everyone, and welcome to week 11 of English 200, 201, and 202. This week, we are going to continue to work on fiction. We are going to read chapter 8 in our textbook, Serious Daring, beginning on page 125. I'd also like you to read Louise Erdrich's Saint Marie, which is also in our textbook on pages 346 to 356. The text often refers to this text as an example, so make sure you read Saint Marie first and then read chapter 8. So we're going to be talking about characters today. Characters in fiction, a character refers to the portrayal of the personalities that take part in a story. The main character in a story is called the protagonist, and the force or the person, place, or thing that keeps that protagonist from achieving what he or she wants is called the antagonist. So characters are really at the heart of your story, and you really want to create fictional characters. You can base them on yourself. You can base them on people you know, people you see when you're out and about. You can even combine traits from a number of different people. And you may want to take one aspect from one and one aspect from another to make them into the character that you need for your story, right? Don't just write characters as exact replicas of those you know, or yourself, right? It's always better to amalgamate, to bring together disparate parts to fit your needs for your story. Because, you get to change the behavior to suit the story that you're writing. But it's really important to keep your characters real. They should be imperfect. Think of all the people you know. They're often not perfect, right? And that's what you like about them. When you introduce a character, when you're thinking about writing a character, you want to think about first what that character looks like. I think the book makes a really good point by talking about thinking about our characters as the people we meet at a party, right? You first when you walk into a party, you see a bunch of people and you make a judgment based on what people look like, right? And these little details give the reader, by giving really clear details, specific details, then the reader can really see who the character is, right? Then you want to think about how characters speak and what they say when they're speaking. It shouldn't actually be like spoken conversation, right? When someone speaks in a story, it needs to have a purpose. So if whatever someone says, it shouldn't just be, hey, what's up? How you doing? Right? We don't want to know that, right? Because that's not moving the plot forward in any way. But we should, it should reveal the character and move the actions of the story. It should reveal who the character is and also move the actions of the story forward. How characters act is another thing that you want to think about. How he or she, reacts to other people. How, what little details do we learn about that person through their interaction in the story and what they do. Any trait that you mention really builds the uniqueness of your character. And I think it's really important that you pay attention to that. Finally, what characters think, as when you're writing a story, you can actually reveal what the character is thinking on the inside, right? You don't want to rely on this too heavily, because can really make the reader feel alienated from the character, especially if what the character's thinking doesn't match his or her actions, right? It starts to feel kind of like, this is kind of weird, right? And a really important thing to do is to weave descriptive elements into the action, allowing us to see you can tell us what the character looks like. in relation to the action that he or she is doing, or what, what the environment's like, or all of these different things can be added to any action. So remember, you want to make sure that that you really use every moment in a story that you're writing. There needs to be for each character some sort of motivation, right? Something that the character desires, right? And it should suggest complexity. It should give the reader little hints throughout the story, like what is it that this character wants or needs, or is trying to get. What is it that's driving this character in this particular story, right? You want to give your character sympathy, even if they aren't good people, right? Maybe you've written a really, really awful person, but you want to give us some sympathy towards that person. Otherwise, the reader doesn't really want to read, right? Why? Why would they? Also, you wanna think about the name that you give your character. Not all characters in short stories need names, and they don't need to be like complex names either. Like, make the name not a big deal, because usually it's not a really big deal. One thing that I'd like you to do to get ready. Oh, and make sure that when you're developing characters, you're gonna have your protagonist, right? But you can have supporting characters as well. In a short story, though, you don't want to have a lot of characters. This week, we're going to mainly be focusing on creating your protagonist, your main character, and really getting to know that main character. But you want to also think about the other people in the story, right? And round characters are characters that are complex. We understand their motivations. They aren't just, flies on a wall, right? Flat characters are just kind of there as cardboard cutouts to emphasize the protagonist. So when you develop a character, you really want to think about who your character is. And I want all of you to work on this. Before you write a short story, you want to make sure that you do a lot of pre-work as to who your character is. You don't have to use all this information in your story, but it's a good way to get to know your characters. A lot of people that write long prose, like fiction, novels, they get to know their characters and feel like they're like living people that they know, right? And the reason why they do that is because they've done so much work understanding who that person is. So what I'd like you to do as you think about who you might want to write about this week, I'd like you to, and whenever you think about who you want your main character to be, I want you to try going through this process. You can start by saying where your character was born, how old your character is, what does your character look like, and try to be as specific as possible, right? What type of music does your character like? And be specific. Don't just be like, he likes country western, right? Like, tell me which songs, right? If your character was driving down the highway and a certain song came on the radio that would make him or her just roll down the windows and scream the song at the top of his or her lungs, what would that song be, right? What's your character's job? And does he like it, or does she like it? How does he or she get to work? What is his or her greatest dream? And then what is his or her biggest fear? What does your character want more than anything else in the world? And then you can get even deeper. Like, think about details like, so on the car that your character drives, what bumper sticker would he or she put on the back of their car, okay? And what kind of car does he or she drive? And then I want you to like actually look inside their car and tell me, like, what does it look like? Is it messy? Is it clean? Does it need an oil change? Just really think about it. Is there an air freshener? Like, I want you to tell me as much as you can about their car. This is just warm up. You're not going to actually do this as a journal, but I want you to think about it. Whenever you write a character, and this is just one example, like, really focus in. Really try to think about who this person is. When you write dialogue, it should be really brief. It should add to the reader's knowledge. It should eliminate the routine. You should really not have those routine exchanges that we have in everyday conversation. There should be some spontaneity. And the dialogue always should be moving the story forward. It should tell the reader about the speaker's character. It should reveal relationships between people. Some questions that you can ask when you're writing dialogue is, do you have enough dialogue? Do you have too much dialogue? Does your dialogue sound like real speech? Have you clearly and unobtrusively tagged all speakers of dialogue? All right, so we're going to do some journal exercises to think about how to write character. The first one is you're going to write a page in the first person, assuming the voice of someone of the opposite gender. This can be a description or a narrative. The main point, though, is to completely lose yourself and to become another person, okay? And the object of this is really to learn how to draw convincing verbal portraits of characters different from yourself and to make them sympathetic, to make them, rounded and complex, even though you don't especially like them or admire what they represent. So please go through and give yourself 250 words to write about someone in the first person who's the opposite gender of you, and you can describe, you can even go through, if you want, you can go through who this character is and then write the page, right? Write this page of who this one narrative of someone of the opposite gender, okay? And then for your second journal, I'd like you to make a list of some of the ways you can suggest approximate age, okay? So for example, wrinkles and gray hair are the most obvious, right? But there's so many more subtle ways to tell us someone's age. And you should be able to list at least a dozen, okay? So, for example, what would someone who's 45 be doing on a Saturday night, right? Versus what someone at 22 is doing on a Saturday night. Or what shoes would a 85-year-old person be wearing versus what shoes a 5-year-old would be wearing, right? And tell us specifically which shoes they are, okay? And you really want to, this is a way to really hone in your power of observation, right? The more precise the detail, the more convincing it is, the more we see your character. How a person adjusts to the aging process really tells us a great deal about her personality, right? This is as true for a fictional character as it is for a real one, right? So I want you to really go through, I want you to give me a dozen of these. So 12 examples of things that you can observe that will really tell us what age a person is, okay? That's your second journal. Your third journal is name that character. Okay, we're going to have some fun with this one. Okay, so I want you to name the following characters. Give them name. Like, what would you name this character in your story, okay? Keeping in mind that you can plant within a name a clue to their role in your fiction, okay? But not obvious. Don't make it obvious, okay? So the first one is a petty white-collar thief who robs his boss over several years. Second one, an envious, bitter woman who makes her sister miserable by systematically trying to undercut her pleasure and self-confidence. A sweet young man too shy to speak to an attractive woman he sees every day at work. The owner of a fast food restaurant who comes on to his young female employees. And a grandmother who just won the lottery. So the reason why we're doing this exercise is you need to realize that the names that you give your characters should not be drawn just like randomly drawn out of a hat, right? But they should be carefully tested to see if they work, right? Sometimes you may want to choose an appropriate name, like, you're choosing a name like Victoria for a rich British woman, right? And once in a while, it's a good idea to choose a name that seems inappropriate, right? So, Bruce, if you name, so say you've got a child of migrant farm workers and you call him Bruce, right? That you may have a reason for that in your story, right? But in each case, you are sending a message to the reader about who the character is, where he came from, and where he's headed. A name can send a message as powerful as the title. So let's spend, I know this is a short exercise, but spend some time on it. Really try to figure out which would be the best name. All right, and finally, you are going to write a scene from a short story that features a protagonist who is very different from you, either in gender or age. You're going to suggest his or her age through subtle references like we've been working on, and you're going to focus on giving this character an appropriate name. Now, before you do this, remember, you should go through this checklist and really know who this character is, okay? I want you to really flesh out who this person is. And then develop a story around your character. Okay, that's 500 words, just a 2-page story. All right, guys, this is a fun week. It's fun to develop characters. It really gets our imagination churning. The journal should get you warmed up and ready. But do spend some time on your exercise. We are going to start workshopping soon. I hope to get a workshop up this week for you guys. Remember the Jessamine West contest. Your entries are due on April 5th. Everyone in this class is required to enter the Jessamine West contest. I will put up information this week. That'll be under our class content. So make sure you enter. If you are in English 200, you are required to enter one time. So you can enter a story, or you can enter a nonfiction piece, or you can enter a poem, okay? But if you're in 201 or 202, you have to enter in all 3 genres, okay? You don't have to enter 5 poems. You can enter up to 5 poems. But everyone is required to enter by April 5th. If you have any questions, as always, send me an email. I will not have office hours this week because I am going to be at AWP, which is the Association of Writing Programs Conference up in Portland. I'll be learning all kinds of things about being a creative writing teacher, which is super fun, but it means I won't be in office hours. I will, however, be online. So if you have questions, just shoot me an email and I will definitely answer you. Okay? Looking forward to reading your stories, and I will see you guys online.